Well, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to the Water Quality Modeling Basics and Beyond webinar series presented by EA. Today, we'll be hearing from Katie Mendoza, who will be talking about HAWQS version 2.0. Katie received her master's in meteorology from Florida State University, subsequently spent time studying decadal or natural decadal climate variability and their effect on water resources, and currently is at Texas A&M AgriLife Research, Blackland Research Extension Center, where she works on HAWQS and other projects as well. And so I'll pass it along to Katie to give her presentation. There'll be sort of natural pauses in the presentation where we're going to take questions. And so if you have any questions, you can include them either using the Q&A, and if that doesn't work, using the chat, and we'll cover the questions at a couple different spots during the presentation. Katie, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Joel. So my name is Katie Mendoza, and I am here with Dr. Raghavan Srinivasan, or Srini, from Texas A&M AgriLife. And I am going to go ahead and give you guys an overview of what the US HAWQS version 2.0 is, then followed by a live demonstration of the platform so everybody can get a good understanding and feel for how the platform can be used. So I am going to go ahead and start with the overview, and I am going to turn off my camera just to make sure that I don't have any technical glitches while that happens. And I am going to go ahead and share my screen as a presentation so that everyone can see it. All right. So the US HAWQS version 2.0, so what does HAWQS stand for? It's the Hydrologic and Water Quality System. And what it is it's a platform that was created to make modeling simple. It was worked on in collaboration with the EPA, the Agricultural Research Service, and Texas A&M AgriLife Research. And our point of contact is Joel Corona from the Office of Water at the US EPA. And my slides aren't advancing. There we go. Okay, so what is HAWQS? All right, so HAWQS is a platform that is filled with pre-processed national datasets, which allows a user to do analysis on watersheds at various scales from the HAWQ 8, 10, 12, and into the HAWQ 14, which I will explain a little bit more about what the HAWQ 14 scale is. All of these datasets are available on annual, monthly, daily time steps from 1981 through 2020. The HAWQS platform is an interactive, user-friendly platform that is cloud-based. And because it is cloud-based, it can preserve the local computation and storage that would be required to run a model on your own systems. It can all be run on the cloud. And HAWQS is a platform that it's not a model itself. What it is it's a platform that uses the SWAT model, which is the soil and water assessment tool, as the core engine to run a watershed model, and it is a semi-distributed watershed scale ecosystem model. So if you are familiar with using a SWAT model, there are some barriers when using them, and I want to just highlight some of the associated functionality in HAWQS that can overcome these barriers using SWAT. So when you are creating a SWAT model, it's very time consuming to develop all the input data sets needed for the model. But in the HAWQS platform, all of the data sets are already pre-processed and they're available for the entire contiguous US at various spatial scales for an extended period of time. So all of the legwork needed to create the input data sets for a SWAT model has already been done. Additionally, the SWAT model is computationally complex and can take a long time to run and to process large watersheds. And like I mentioned before, because HAWQS is a cloud-based interface, and everything is already built in, it can significantly, reduces that amount of processing time and running time for your model. When you're using a SWAT model, you want to make sure that it is a calibrated watershed for however you're going to use it. And in HAWQS, we already have calibration parameters for many of the watersheds throughout the US, and there's continued ongoing rolling calibration, which I will discuss momentarily. Additionally, when you are using a SWAT model, you have to go in and manually adjust each of the different text files within the model to help represent any policy or program implementation that you're trying to do. But when using the HAWQS platform, it's all automated, and you can adjust these parameters in the user-friendly interface available to you. And finally, there is a big learning curve when you're trying to set up and run a SWAT model, but the HAWQS platform is very intuitive and user-friendly, and it helps to translate that model setup and execution into a seamless tool, as you will see. So some of the additional benefits of using the HAWQS platform is, once again, all of the data sets are federally approved and everything is in the public domain. It does not require expert water modeling experience or any GIS skills to use. Everything is done within the platform. It's secure distributed collaborative modeling through shared storage and execution. So you can store all of your models within the platform on the cloud, and you can also share your models with other people in your group. You can so that you can collaborate on those models as you create them. And it also is really great at helping to preserve institutional memory and reproducibility through transparency, so that you can create a model and others in your organization can actually access that model and be able to replicate your results that you created, using the same model all within the platform. It visualizes spatial and temporal data, as well as performs various analysis of water quality and quantity assessments. And you can, such as low duration curves and flood frequency. These are outputs that can be generated directly from the HAWQS platform. And you can visualize everything in maps as well, which you'll see. This also allows non-water quality modelers, such as ecologists, environmentalists, and economists, to estimate water quantity and quality benefits under various scenarios using a calibrated water model. And users can perform both online and offline modeling with freely available tools for desktop exercises. So beyond just the HAWQS platform, you can actually download this model, and the SWAT community does provide additional tools that you can use on your computer to run these type of models offline as well. But the biggest benefit of using the HAWQS platform is it's extremely efficient. It reduces the amount of time it takes to set up a SWAT model by at least 90%, and that's being very generous because all of the hard work of creating all the input data sets and all of the calibration is already there. And then when you go to create your scenarios, it's just a easy point and click user interface that allows you to do that. So some of the applications you can use for HAWQS, you can use HAWQS with. You can look at the benefits of different conservation practices. You can look at both point and non-point pollution control scenarios. You can look at land use change scenarios. You can also look at the differences of agricultural and urban management alternative scenarios that you have. You can do climate change scenarios, and you can look at the output or the impacts on both water quality and quantity. And you can also do benefit assessments of various water quality improvement programs that you might already have implemented in your watershed. And then, of course, you can use HAWQS to help to develop any regulatory policies and analysis that you might need. So that was a basic overview of what the HAWQS platform is. So now I'm going to jump into some highlights of what's new in the HAWQS version 2.0. And if you'd like, you can, if you don't already have a HAWQS account, you can definitely scan the QR code here and register for an account so that you can check out the platform as we go. And so we could pause right here to see, I do see somebody's hand is raised. Alyssa, was there any questions?
There aren't any questions
Okay.
in the chat that haven't been already answered.
Okay, all right, sounds great. All right, then we will continue right along. So what's new in version 2.0 of HAWQS? So the first thing is we have some new updated input datasets. I'm just going to highlight a few, but this is a table of all of the input datasets already pre-processed within the platform and available to use at all those various scales that we'll talk about. So with the soils, before we only had StatsGo, which is the state level soils. We have updated that to SURGO, which has the county level soil surveys from 2018. So that is a new and improved data set within the HAWQS 2.0 platform. Additionally, we have included ICLUS, which is the integrated climate and land use scenarios, into the HAWQS platform to look at population projections into the future under various climate scenarios. We also use the NHD Plus version 2 to create the watershed boundaries and the stream networks. We also have updated point sources from the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. These are set from 2019. And we also incorporated a new wetlands data set, which is from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services and the National Wetlands Inventory, so that we have a better distinguished land use of wetlands across the model. So in addition to data updates, we also added new modeling functionality. So this is the biggest thing was our the finer resolution of the HAWQ14 model. So to give you guys a perspective on what that looks like. So a HAWQ8 model is here in green across region 3, and an average subbasin within a HAWQ8 model is about 1,400 miles squared. As you move down, you have HAWQ10s, which are slightly smaller, about 200 miles squared, down to the HAWQ12, around 38 square miles within a subbasin, and then down to the highest resolution that we're offering, which is the HAWQ14, which is about an 8 square mile average subbasin. And within each of these subbasins, you have about 90 different HRUs. And so HRUs are hydrologic response units, which are defined as unique land, soil, and slope categorizations within that subbasin. So these models get very comprehensive. And to just show you the scale of modeling, at the HAWQ8, you're modeling at the 4th or 5th order streams, but when you get down to the HAWQ14, you're actually modeling at the 1st and 2nd order streams. So you get that very fine high resolution data set, which is new in the version 2.0. Additionally, we added in increased control over HRU specifications. So in your model, you have the ability to aggregate the number of HRUs and reduce the number of HRUs in your model to help speed up processing time, but also not to eliminate so many that you're changing the structure of your watershed. And we included the ability to reduce and control the HRUs by setting amount of area, or if you wanted to select a target number of HRUs to use. And additionally, we also included an option if you wanted to aggregate your watershed to use the ICLUS land use projection scenarios, population projection scenarios. You can use that here to set up your model, and the ICLUS land use tables will be automatically populated in your scenarios that you create. Another option that we added for HRU aggregation is the ability to select different land uses for exemption from being aggregated out, and also the ability to retain their original area so that they don't receive any of the aggregated HRUs. And by default, the water and wetlands areas are always selected to help maintain the integrity of your watershed. Additionally, some new functionality is the ability to select the pre-calibrated model parameters. So we have, within the HAWQS platform currently, we have a few different options to select for calibration. You can use any of the pre-calibrated watersheds, which were calibrated from either the HAWQS version 1 or some WOTUS applications, some of the state HAWQS that did calibration efforts. We included all of that in our national HAWQS. And so within your watershed, you have the ability to select which parameters you'd like to use. Additionally, through some work that was supported by the Office of Research and Development by Rajbir Parmar, we also are in the process of creating a complete HAWQ-12 calibrated data set across the entire modeling, across the entire model. And how we are doing that is we're doing flow calibration. And for regions that have strong human intervention or major dams or something obstructing the waterways, we're doing a machine learning parameter transfer to transfer the calibrated parameters into ungauged or human intervention subbasins to create a complete HAWQ-12 calibrated data set. And so currently, at this time, regions 1 through 8 are available within the platform as with complete HAWQ-12 calibration datasets. We've also done some interface feature updates within the HAWQS version 2.0. One of the big things is we now are allowing for project downloads. We provide GIS data in GeoJSON format that you can download individually. And we also are including the ability to zip and download the entire GIS project, which includes your land use, elevation map, and soil map, which is directly compatible with QSWAT, ArcGIS, and ArcGIS Pro. And additionally, within the platform, you are now able to view your subbasins, the ponds that are modeled within your watershed, any point source discharges, reservoirs. You can always look at the routing and the various streams. So there's a significant amount of visualization updates within the platform. And when looking at outputs, we also have some updates here to the graphics and mapping capabilities. We now allow you to view up to 3 different scenarios in comparison for when looking at charts. And you also have the ability to download the data as either a figure. You can make it into a PDF. You can also just download the data as a CVS or an Excel, or you can just view the data in a table as well. You can also zoom into some of the time series here, which I'll show you during the demo. And when we also provide the mapping capabilities of the outputs from your watershed. And once again, you can select up to 3 different scenarios for comparison. And what it will provide you is one figure of the absolute values from your first scenario. Here I just kind of did a comparison to show you that it'll provide you the output of the output of the one scenario, the output of the other scenario, and then it'll also provide you with a map of the absolute difference between the two. And it will also provide you with a map of the percent of the difference between the two. And once again, each one of these maps can be downloaded, either the data or the actual figure itself. and you do have more control within the platform to you can either provide predefined ranges or you can select various colors to modify your color scale. We also are providing, so after we get through this entire demonstration and you're like, wait, what did we do? Don't worry, because we are providing within the platform different case scenarios that you can download and use at your leisure to get familiar with how to create baseline conditions, do a land use change, point source change, changes to agricultural practices, and a climate change scenario. And the data sets associated with each of these walkthroughs are also available within the platform to use. So that was a little bit about what is currently in the HAWQS version 2.0, and I wanted to just briefly mention some of the things that are coming are coming to the US HAWQS and potentially could be coming to the US HAWQS. So there is definitely going to be continued calibration. Like I mentioned before, we had an effort with ORD EPA to calibrate the HAWQ12 datasets. And right now we had about 48% of all of the HAWQ12s that were flow calibrated. And what we were finding was that the flow calibration wasn't performing well in arid regions or highly managed watersheds. So we are transitioning to an evapotranspiration calibration within those regions. And we're using the OpenET monthly ensemble data to create or continue that calibration effort. So when that is finished, we will have that completed HAWQ12 data set with either flow or ET calibration across the entire US. Additionally, we are also doing a water quality calibration, and we're using the extreme gradient boosting machine learning technique to simulate continuous time series from the USGS grab samples and the flow so that we can more accurately calibrate water quality. And we're going to be calibrating for sediment, nitrogen, and phosphorus. And this work has begun and it continues along the east coast of the US. And I just wanted to share some publications that have come out of this work. So this is all peer-reviewed and readily available within the HAWQS platform. Another option that we are discussing for HAWQS is whether to continue using the stable SWAT 2012 version or transition into SWAT Plus. And so I just wanted to give you some highlights of the differences between the two. So within the SWAT model, you have your watershed, which is then separated into subbasins, and your subbasins are then separated into HRUs. When you're looking at the SWAT Plus model, you have a little bit more routing distinctions where your watershed goes to subbasins, and then you have distinct water areas, and then they're separated into landscape units. And so landscape units consist of uplands and floodplains, and then those landscape units are translated into HRUs. So although SWAT Plus is more spatially explicit than SWAT, and SWAT Plus HRUs are routed from the subbasin channels to the main channel, so the routing is a little bit different, whereas SWAT, the HRUs are routed from the center of the subbasin. But because there is more HRUs and more of the landscape units, SWAT Plus does take about 30 to 50% more computational running time to complete than SWAT. So that's one of the challenges that we're discussing. And that SWAT Plus is still under development, so it's not quite as stable as the SWAT 2012 version. So we're not sure, if we want, when that transition is the best time to move for there. And the other thing is that we are looking at potential expansion of the modeling extent to include Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and Guam to give it a little bit more comprehensive extent of modeling. And so that's all still, dependent on funding and data availability as to whether those regions will be able to be included in HAWQS in the future. So I wanted to just show that this is definitely a collaborative effort, and we have additional HAWQS platforms where we receive support and funding to help make all of the platforms better. and we have various state and regional platforms available in the US, just to highlight some of them here. And we also have international HAWQS platforms with additional support and funding for various countries like South Africa and one of the states in Brazil. We have an India one, and we also have a global HAWQS where users can upload their projects for any regions and share them with other researchers and those who are interested in those models. So at this time, if we have any, Alyssa, is there any questions or anything at this point?
There are a lot of questions going on in the chat,
Okay.
but they are being answered kind of like as we're going along. I think it would
Okay.
probably be best to just save some of these questions for the end after you've gone through the demo, because some of the questions might be answered by your demonstration.
Okay, that sounds great. All right, so at this time, I am going to transition into the live demonstration platform of the platform. And so I do have most of the slides that we're going to go through. I do have slides of what we're going to go through so that, you know, if you aren't able to follow along, we'll definitely still have all of these available for you to use as a guide. And let's see. Okay, so let's see. All right, so this is the HAWQS platform. This is the introductory page. And here you have, I just want to first kind of just give you an overview of what's available before we jump in. And so this just gives you a brief overview of what HAWQS is, what we've seen, and let me just, okay. Oops, sorry. Give me just 1 second. I flipped to a different screen and need to get back. Here we go. Okay. All right. And so this just gives you a little bit of overview of, you know, what HAWQS is, some references for HAWQS, just a brief overview of, you know, how to create a project. You create scenarios, you run the model, and you can analyze output right here within this platform. Another area under the documents and support section. So this is a really great, helpful area to, if you want to learn more about HAWQS, if you want some step-by-step tutorial walkthrough. We also have a document about what's new in this version 2.0. Some related publications, and I had mentioned all those use cases, and so they are all available here. And also just some other calibration information, our technical documentation, and other information available here. So most of the questions can be answered. We try to provide all documentation and support within the platform to answer any questions you may have. We also have a section for the SWAT model if you are interested in the engine behind all of this. All right. So we're going to go ahead and so if you have not registered, there's an option to log in or register here. So I'm going to just quickly log in. All right, and so I am going to open this up in my other tab to have that there. So when you first open up the platform, if you had projects that you already ran, they would be available here. If you wanted to create a new project, you would just simply click on the new project. And so here I had mentioned before that there are the various calibrated watersheds. You can view where those watersheds are within the map, and you can even hover over some of the gauges to see the summary statistics of those calibration efforts. We have a few different options within the drop-down menu to view. And even if you don't select a watershed here, I'll show you as we get into the actual model of where you can select different calibration parameters. And so you also have the ability to toggle on and off these calibration parameters. And you can also view the HAWQ2 boundaries just to give you a sense of where within the country your watershed might fall. So we are going to do an example watershed of, so what you can do to select to create a watershed is you can either simply click on the map and it will auto-generate the watershed for wherever you clicked, and then you can adjust as needed if you wanted to select a different area, or you can simply enter in the ID of the watershed that you want to model into the text box, and it'll automatically pull that up. So from here, you can see that there are 14 subbasins within this watershed, and there are 54,000 HRUs. You can show the routing on the map by just simply clicking on the routing icon. And then you can also give your project a unique name. You can keep by default, it'll always tell you which data set you used and what your subbasin was. And before we create our data set, I just want to show you, so the HAWQS data sets, this drop-down menu here, this is where you can see all of the version 2 data sets that are available. Here you can see the HAWQ12 flow calibrated. And so if you are following along and you don't see these data sets, that could be because of the tier that you have been, everybody starts off at tier 1. And if you do want to move into a different tier, all you simply have to do is just send an email to request being upgraded to a different tier, and we can handle that for you. I had mentioned before the use cases, and so these are all the associated data sets for the use cases. And if you did because you can also upload data sets into the HAWQS platform, if you have anything updated that has been shared, you can access that here as well. So for our example, we're going to use the HAWQ8 dataset here. And I'm just going to go ahead and create the project with the default name. And I will go through the summary of this. So here you can see an overall summary of your watershed, the name of the watershed using the data set used, the number of subbasins, HRUs, and the total area. You have the ability to set your HRUs here, which we'll go through, to create a scenario, the metadata associated with your project. And you also have projects downloads. There's also some actions I just want to point out where you can share your project. You can copy this project. If you want to create a different version of it, you can change your project name as well. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you some of the project downloads. I showed you this screen before, but this is where you would come. It's best to run a scenario and then create your zipped file. Otherwise, the GIS land use data will not be included. So you have to actually have a scenario in your project in order to have the GIS. Just a little note to add in there. All right, so we're going to jump into setting up our HRUs. So when we set up our HRUs, like I mentioned, there are a few different options to do that. You can set it by area, target number of HRUs, or you can use the HAWQS threshold. And we're just going to go ahead and set it by area. And we have it set up in the HAWQS platform for the suggested value of area for each of the different subbasins that you're using. But you can always change these values to whatever you want. And as you scroll down, you can see here all of the different land uses that are available within this watershed are here, and you can choose whether you want to add in any other exemption or retaining area land uses or keep the default selected. And so for this one, we're just going to keep all the default selected and hit Save Changes. And so as you can see, Originally, we had 54,000 HRUs, and now we have about 8,500 HRUs after the threshold change. And so it also provides you with a visual of the change in land use and a table so that you can actually see exactly where that land use changed. So we notice that the forest is predominant in this watershed, and each of those forest totals did increase slightly. We can see that this riparian wetlands is one of the land uses that was held exempt from aggregation. And as you can see, the total area is exactly the same from before and after the aggregation. And so so you can tell that although there had been some modifications, the overall view of the watershed, the overall composition of the watershed has not been significantly changed. So from here, we're going to go ahead and create a scenario. And so from the Create a Scenario page, you have the ability to name your scenario. We'll just go ahead and keep this one default since this is going to be kind of our baseline default scenario that we're running here. You have the ability to choose which weather data you want to use. And right now we have, for actual climate, we have PRISM and NextRad. And then we do have, I think it's 10 or 11 climate scenarios, CMET5 climate scenario models that you can actually use to simulate future climate scenarios. So for this demonstration, we're going to use PRISM. You can define your start date and end date of your simulation. And we're going to go 1988 and 2020. And by default, we set it up with a 2-year warm-up period. This is what we suggest is sufficient in most regions in the US, so we'll keep it there. And you have the ability to change the output settings from daily, monthly, or yearly. We'll keep these ones at daily. And this is one of the great features about HAWQS as well, is that you can choose which model you want to run what you want to run your model for. So if you have an older model that was run with maybe like version 670 and you want to see a comparison of it, you don't have to try to recreate that older version. You can simply run that version of the SWAT model right within the HAWQS platform, and all of the input datasets are compatible with each of the versions of SWAT. So we're just going to select the most recent one here, and we're going to save our changes. And this will just provide us with a overall summary of our scenario. We have the ability to customize SWAT inputs. And so I'm going to just, show you a few of these. We have the first and foremost is the ability to select the calibration data. So when you select this option, and it will open up a window, and here you have the ability to choose which calibration parameters you want to use. This is what I had mentioned before, that even if you don't select a watershed calibration set from the Create New Project page, you have the ability to determine which parameters you want to use. And so for this watershed, we have a HAWQ8 calibration effort. And right now that's the one that's highlighted, and you can see the watershed that was calibrated and the gauge that was used. When you hover over the gauge, it provides you with the summary statistics of that calibration. And let me just scroll out a little bit so that you can see. And it also, if you click on the dot, the stream flow data. So I clicked on the gauge, and it actually, it'll provide you with the actual daily stream flow, and you can change the start and end date. It'll visualize it and update that chart. And once again, you always have the ability to download that figure or actually download the data. So you can, straight from the interface, you can actually download USGS flow data. So I just want to show you, if we wanted to change to a different calibration parameter set, you would simply select it from the drop-down menu. And what you would see is, now this watershed was calibrated, but the gauges were up here. So there were more headwater gauges that were calibrated. And then in the other option that's available from the drop-down menu, you can see that this watershed was a little bit larger watershed, and the gauge was actually located outside of the area of interest that we were looking at. So For our model, we want to use the one that is more accurately representative of what we're trying to model here. And if you scroll down, it actually shows you the values of each of the parameters that were used during the calibration effort. So you can see all of the values that were used, and those are already implemented in the watershed when you select this. So you can just make sure you save your changes for whatever calibration parameters you used. And there's other options on the left-hand menu of the different customized SWAT inputs. So let me just show you the visual view of it. So you have different basin inputs that you can use. Here you can do land use updates if you wanted to look at point source updates, or if you wanted to do some ag management or BMP conservation practices, you can simply do that in here. And I will walk you through those when we create a few other scenarios. There is the ability to look at HRU output through the HAWQS platform. Currently, right now, the limitation is you can only look at 20 variables for 20 HRUs. So you have to select which HRUs you want to view the outputs for. And if you do want to view outputs for all HRUs, you would just simply download the entire project, and you could just modify that and run that offline to get all the HRUs. So currently, because HRUs there's so many within a watershed, we limit it to what you can output within the platform. And so to run the model, you would simply select Run Model. There's a few different options here. So it gives you an estimated time of running. And this is just based on, how many users might be on at the time, how many scenarios are being run at one time. You can write SWAT editor tables. So if you are familiar with editing a SWAT project offline, you can make sure that you select that box so that you can be provided with all of the tables that you need to run offline. If you want to just look at the model, if you want to skip the model run and just write all your inputs, you can select that as well. Or you can also skip model output processing, and you wouldn't be able to view anything online, but it might save some runtime. And one of the great functions of the platform is that you can select to email me when my run completes. And so you can set up the model, make your changes, and run the model and walk away, and it'll let you know when it's all finished and ready for you to view. And so that's how you would run the scenario. I'm not going to run the scenario because it is going to take 53 minutes, but I have these finished, which I will walk you through as soon as we get through finishing the other scenarios. So if we want to look at other scenarios that we want to create, what we can do is there's two different ways. You can start to create a new scenario down here, or if you want to make sure that anything that you changed in your baseline scenario carries through into your other scenarios that you create, you can simply you can copy the settings. And so I'm going to copy the settings from my baseline, and I'm going to call this an urban buffer. I'm going to spell urban correctly. And so now it created a new scenario, but as you can see, all of the selections, the same weather data set, the same start and end time, the same model version, they're all still selected. And so how I can create an urban buffer would be, this would be something that you could create along in urban areas to help prevent runoff from entering your streamways in urban areas. And so you would go underneath the Ag Management BMP conservation practices, and you would select general parameters. And so what it will open up a screen where you can select, first you need to select just one HRU that you want to make a modification for. And then once you make your adjustments, you can tell the platform where you want those adjustments to be made. So it's, although we select one HRU from the map, we can save those changes onto multiple HRUs at one time, so we don't have to do this process, 5,000 times. You can either select a subbasin from the drop-down menu, or if you know specifically what subbasin you're interested in, you can select it from the map. We are going to do this on urban land, so I'm going to select one urban. I'll just pick this high density land use type. I will select just one soil, and from the slope class, I'll select the one slope class. And then you hit Get Data. And now this shows you that you have this one HRU selected, and these are all the values that are associated with that HRU. And so when you want to add a buffer strip or a filter strip, you can do that right here. There's this one little parameter in here called filter W, which is the width edge of field filter strip. And we did a study with the EPA, with Santosh, looking at various widths of buffers in various land use types. And the average buffer for an urban area was 29 meters. So we're just going to go ahead and use that as our example here. And so we are going to, so we made our one change. And now where are we going to apply these changes? So we have an option where we can apply to the selected HRUs, or we can apply to all HRUs. And so because we only want this to be done on urban land, we're going to apply to a selected HRUs. But we want to do it for all subbasins. And we want to look and use all the urban land uses. So we have high density, medium, and low density. And as you can see, as I selected those, the soil types auto changed based on the soils that are available for each of these different types of land. So you can select all the soils. And then this watershed only has a one soil class, or slope class, but we'll go ahead and select all just to make sure we get them all. And then we're going to hit Save Changes. And so although we only selected the one HRU, when you scroll down, you can see that the changes were done on all of our soils, land uses, and subbasins. And the change that was done was adding the filter strip. And so if you here, before you run your scenario, you can always remove this one and add a new one if you want to change your modifications. And so if you made a mistake and you want to change the filter width, all you simply need to do is you can, I think delete is over here. You can, delete that and start over, as simple as that. You don't need to rewrite all your files. So we're going to go ahead and save changes here. And so now we have, so this is also another toggle menu up here. So I'm going to just click on my scenarios. And so now we have our default scenario. We have an urban buffer scenario. So we're going to go ahead and create one more scenario. And we are going to do a climate scenario. So I'm going to open back up my default scenario, because once again, I want to make sure that the only thing that I'm changing is the climate, and I'm not changing anything else. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy the settings from my default scenario, and I'm going to name this one my climate scenario. And once again, as you can see, the weather data set, start year, all of that is the same. You're going to look under Customize SWAT inputs, and we're going to see that our calibration data is still selected. And so for the climate scenario, we have a few different options here. So what we're going to do in this scenario is we're going to look underneath the weather data section under climate sensitivity and variability analysis. And what you can do here is you can adjust, or you can increase or decrease your rainfall by up to 100%, and you can increase or decrease your temperature by up to 20 degrees Celsius. So I'm going to reduce our precipitation by 15%, and I'm going to increase my temperature by 2 degrees Celsius. And once again, you have the ability to select where you want this to be applied. Do you want it to be applied to all subbasins in all months, or do you want it to be applied to your selected subbasins in months? And so, so if you wanted to make this change only in the summer for all subbasins, you could select all the subbasins and then just select your summer months, June, July, August, something like that. Or you can make it, you can say that there's going to be a 15% reduction in rain and a 2% increase in temperature for the entire year for all subbasins in all months. So you have the different options of whether you want to select everything or pinpoint where you want it and how much you want it. You could even change these values for different seasons as well. We're just going to do it for all of them. We're going to save that change. And once again, what was changed is underneath your saved modifications. So you can view that. You can see the amount of precipitation change, temperature change, and here it looks like it selected just the summer months. And so because I want it for all the months, I'm going to say, oh, this was done in error, so I'm going to delete this one. And now I'm going to make sure I apply it to all subbasins in all months. I'm going to do it this way because it seems to be giving me trouble the other way. Let me go ahead and refresh the screen. It looks like it's giving me just a little trouble here. Let me try this again. -15, 2, and I'm going to apply it. There we go. So now my save changes. For some reason, my save changes button wasn't allowing me to select. But it looks like it worked. And I'm going to view that to verify that all of my changes were done to all months, all subbasins, all land use, soils, and slopes. Okay, so I have these 3 scenarios. I have my default, my urban buffer scenario, and my climate scenario. And so all those are running. And I'm going to jump over to my completed project, which is the same project, just with all of those same 3 scenarios completed their runs. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the default scenario. And I'm going to show you some of the functionality of the output data here. So in the output data, you have the ability to run your SWAT check to identify potential modeling problems. And so you simply do that by just opening up the box and selecting Run SWAT Check. And so what this will do is give you kind of an overview of your watershed and what it's looking like. You have this hydrology view, and it'll give you your water balance ratios. And it'll also give you a little graphic to show you how much ET, how much PET and precipitation coming in, what type of surface runoff you're receiving, and recharge to the deep aquifer, just kind of an overall water balance image. You can also look at your sediment within the watershed, how much surface runoff you have, and how much in-stream sediment change there is across your watershed. And we also have nitrogen and phosphorus cycles that are provided as well. So you can see, exactly what you're seeing, what's happening overall in the model. There are a few different options as well. As you scroll through, you can see the land use options. Let me see if I can make my screen a little bigger. There you go. Land use summary, which will give you your biomass and yield for each of the different types of land use, just kind of an overview of what's going on in your model. And here we go. And there also is, if there was any reservoirs in your watershed, this is where you would see some reservoir information and how much total water loss was removed, and just various information about your reservoirs. You can also see your point source, a summary of your point sources here. So what's your total subbasin load, the point source with the inlet load, and just the load from the inlet plus your point sources, what percent is actually coming from your point sources. So just gives you a good overview of what's going on in your model. So let's go back to our scenarios and let's look at some of the actual output. So you have the option to output charts, maps. We did add in the function to produce C=W2 input files from the HAWQS output file. You can also look at flood frequency analysis and some base flow separation analysis as well. So let me just walk you through some of the output charts. So here you can choose which file you'd like to see if you wanted to look at your reach, your subbasin, or if you had defined any HRUs from your output to print, you could also select that here. But we didn't choose any for ours, so we won't look at that file. So we have the output reach file. That's some various statistics. Here you can look at your load or your flow duration curve. You can see the average, max min. You can look at box plots or the daily values. So we'll just take a look at some average. And then once again, you can select from your subbasin from the drop-down menu, or if you know of a subbasin of interest, you can select that one as well. And so let's go ahead. You can look at, let's look at some flow. And you can select, if you select your flow output, you can decide whether you want to see it as a line, an area plot, scatter, column, or spline. So you have different options to view it. And you can also decide whether you want to have a y-axis or not. So when you have multiple variables, you can choose to have multiple y-axes. So we'll go ahead and just look at the flow just to start. You also have the option to select metric or unit, metric or imperial units. And then here you have the ability to select up to 3 scenarios to compare the outputs. So we're just going to look at the flow in one subbasin, and we're going to compare it to our climate scenario. So our baseline to our climate scenario, and just see what the flow looks like. Actually, let's go ahead and select all of them just so we can get a full comparison. So I simply hit Get Chart, and it produces a time series where you have our flow, climate, and urban buffer scenarios all within this plot. Now you can, once again, you can download this as a figure or you can download the data. And if you're interested in a specific period, you can zoom in and highlight and get a very, accurate picture of what's happening within those various years in your model as well. And then you can always reset your zoom here. Okay. Let's see. Go ahead and you also have a navigation menu on the left-hand side here. So we're going to go ahead and look at some map outputs. And once again, in the map, you have the ability to look at reach or subbasin outputs. Let's go ahead and look at some subbasin outputs. And you can look at the total, max, min, daily, monthly, or annual average. So because we ran our model for about 12 years, we're going to go ahead, or 20 years, we're going to go ahead and look at the annual average just to see how that looks. And from the subbasin file, you can choose from a few variables that are available in the subbasin file. And we're going to go ahead and look at, I guess we'll look at the sediment yield and see what that looks like. And I'm just going to choose one subbasin for comparison just to show you the 4 panels that are available. I'm going to hit Get Map. All right, and so this first one is our default run and the average sediment yield, and the urban run and our average sediment yield. So when you're just first looking at it, you're like, well, these, you can't really quite see a very visual difference. But we also provide the actual absolute annual difference map here. And as you hover over each one, you can see the values. And then we also provide the difference, the percent difference. So you can see that some of these, there's a 20% decrease, whereas some of them have a 25% increase. So you can see exactly how that urban buffer would impact various subbasins within your watershed. You also have the ability to change your colors. So I know all blue is kind of hard to see. So if you can select your minimum color, you can either select on the color bar or within your color range. You can go median value. I'm not too great at selecting colors on the fly, and your maximum values. And also, if you have a specific color scale, you can enter in your RGB values for each of these, and it will also, auto-populate what those are. And we'll hit OK just to see how that changes our color map. So you have the ability to, really play around and change your maps within the platform. And then once you are satisfied with your color changes, once again, you can always download as an image, or you can download the data and use offline as well. So I am going to also show you real quick the flood frequency analysis. So let's look at, so for this one, I had already selected it. So let me jump back to the, oh, I won't be able to. Okay. So when you want to, if you're interested in the flood frequency analysis, what we currently have available in HAWQS is you can select which subbasin or all subbasins that you're interested in. And so I believe I selected this one just south of Birmingham. And you can select the subbasin, and then you simply, you can either select for all subbasins or request it for select subbasins, and then you do a request file, and it will generate a file for you to download. And so I did this for both the baseline, and I did this for the urban buffer scenario. Oh, no, I did it for the climate scenario. There we go. And I did the output, the flood frequency analysis. And so I also selected that same subbasin. And so I am going to just quickly flip back over to my presentation to show you that comparison of those two files that are available. And so these are the files that are produced that are available for you to download. So this is the default baseline scenario, and this is our climate scenario. And so what it does is it provides you with the flood frequency analysis, where the green dots are the HAWQS discharge, peak discharge, and this is the blue lines are your confidence limits, and it also provides the fitted frequency curve. And so as you can see, from the baseline scenario into the climate scenario, we are seeing HAWQS peak discharges that are a little bit above the fitted curve, but was still within our confidence limit. So that is just a little demonstration of the HAWQS platform. And so I think now we can take questions, and I can flip back to the platform if needed to demonstrate anything else.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for that presentation. It was really great. So what I've been doing in terms of the questions is I've been documenting them. Srini and Arun have been doing an amazing job responding to the questions as they come up. So most of them have been addressed already, but because there were a lot of questions that kind of followed similar themes, I just wanted to reiterate a couple of things for folks that were on the phone who may not have been able to keep an eye on the chat as we were going along. And hopefully we'll be able to collate these questions into a place too, and maybe get them back out to folks so that you can see the questions and then the responses. So the first thing that I just wanted to reiterate is that HAWQS runs on the cloud. So any projects that you create, any projects that you want to then save and share with others, they're going to be external from your own computers. And so if your computer dies, if you don't have your computer with you, you still have the ability to access these runs. The other thing is that HAWQS is intended for, this one's US HAWQS, so it's intended for use within the lower 48, the spatial scales that are available to folks, at least at the initial tier that you'd have when you're joining at tier 1, it's like HUC 8 and HUC 10. But if you get access to the higher tiers, which you can you can submit on the HAWQS website. Once you get access, you can ask for a higher tier access. You will have the ability to model down to the HAWQ14 subbasin scale, and that's the one that Katie was discussing within this presentation. There are other HAWQS type platforms available in select regions within the US and other countries, but they just have a slightly different name. And then I think there's ongoing development for HAWQS at the global scale. And yeah, Katie, it looks like you're sharing the tiers for folks if you're interested. That also gives you a sense of like the various tiers that exist and also the data sets that are available with each tier. I think another question was about how do you kind of interact with this if you worked with ArcSWAT or SWAT editor? Like, how does this differ? Is the same as HAWQS? So if you have a SWAT database, a project database, you can upload those into HAWQS. And so you can kind of migrate your project into the HAWQS platform and utilize the cloud computing capabilities. Yep, perfect. Thank you, Katie. And then in the other direction too, you can download the models and manipulate them in SWAT editor for any functionality that's not available in the HAWQS platform. So there's a lot of interchangeable, the models developed outside of HAWQS can be used in HAWQS. Models developed in HAWQS can be modified outside of HAWQS. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And then in terms of what is included within HAWQS as the core modeling engine, there were a lot of questions about is it SWAT 2012 or SWAT Plus and what version? So just to clarify, it's SWAT 2012. Versions 635 through 692 are available within the platform, and it's not currently configured to be used with SWAT Plus. And there is a slide on the differences between those in Katie's presentation to give you a sense of why that we might be using SWAT versus SWAT Plus. There was a lot of interest in the CE Qual W2 connection for those of you who didn't catch it in the chat. So there is now this connection to the CE Qual W2 model. So essentially outputs that have HAWQS or SWAT outputs that are compatible with use within CE Qual W2 are now available through the platform, and it's ready for input into the other model. So it's a nice new feature there.
Alyssa, and let me
yeah.
just jump in real quick.
Yes,
so
please.
I'm just opening up the CE Qual page right here. And so, you know, what we did was we created, we calculated from our outputs into the CE Qual W2. We provide the Excel file that we use for our calculations. We also provide the monthly fraction table used for the LG. And so we give you a suggestion on, you know, whether you should look at subbasin output, or what, you know, what the assumptions that we made and what restrictions there are with subbasin output versus reach output, because you do have those two different options to output from your model into CE Qual. And so you can select which one you want, a reach output or a subbasin output, and then which subbasins you want them for. And then once again, you do the file request and you just download these files. And so these files are the CIN files for the CE Qual W2 model, and they can be used directly into the model.
Thanks, Katie. That was definitely helpful additional context for those who are interested in this capability. And so then the last thing that I saw a lot of themes on is what data is kind of available within the platform versus what could be updated. So essentially, the benefit of HAWQS is that you have this platform with pre-processed input data sets, including for calibration for select areas within the US. And users can always update those parameters with more site-specific data as needed. So you could always use HAWQS as a starting point, download the model, and then make modifications or updates based on the site-specific data that you have or the site-specific needs that you have. And you could, if you wanted, re-upload the project and then use the computing resources to run it and store and save it and share with others. So you can still utilize other components of HAWQS if you wanted. But yeah, all of the pre-processed data is available to users, but it can be modified. And just to clarify about the calibration, the calibrated parameters are available for select areas. It's meant to help facilitate your use of SWAT, but full coverage for calibrated parameters is still ongoing work. And then a lot of, oh yeah, go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in. So, if you do have an updated land use that you want to, implement into the watershed, you can do that within the platform. If you open up the land use update, and it'll give you instructions on specifically what the format needs to look like for that file, how you need to save it, and how many files you're able to upload. And you can simply modify those land uses and upload them right into the platform. You can do that for land uses. You can do that for point sources. You can also update different point source data sets if you have something more recent or specific for your watershed. And let me just see. And so land use, point sources, and then, if you have different, obviously management scenarios that you want to implement, you can do that within the platform as well.
Great. So then the other thing I wanted to mention is there were a lot of questions about the specifics of HAWQS, including data sources and like how could you do like certain steps. We do, as Katie had mentioned during her presentation, have a variety of use cases and technical documentation available. I'm going to send out a bunch of links, but I'm going to wait until the end of the webinar. So it's kind of at the very bottom for everyone to access. It's going to include links to the documentation page that you see here, the HAWQS website, SWAT documentation. So if you have questions, there were some questions about, what processes are represented in stream. You'll be able to refer to the SWAT documentation for that. There's also a link here that Katie's showing. And then finally, there were a lot of questions of, are these slides going to be made available? This webinar is going to be recorded and available to everyone, and the link for where that recording will be made available once it's been processed will also be included at the very end of the webinar. I don't know, so as we've been covering some of these questions, Srini or Arun, were there other questions or themes that have been popping up that you wanted to cover verbally?
I think we covered most of the stuff actually, but again, the people who are participating and the users know who we are. Actually, if there are other further things, we can definitely reach out to us. But there is a lot of information available in the HAWQS help page as you see them here, especially the use cases. Most of your questions will be answered if you follow one of the use cases of your interest, whether that's a land use change or point source change or whatever the simulation that you want to run using HAWQS. But if you think there is a functionality that's missing, you are always welcome to reach out to us, and we may be able to at least give you an indication whether that's planned in the coming or the future releases, or if that's something of more interest to the general audience or general users, we may be able to even consider that in the next release or next update and things of that nature. So there is a lot of work is in the pipeline, and there will be more and more features will be enhanced as the demand increases, as the various SWAT groups or the HAWQS groups are wanting to develop new features and things like that. We will continue to keep on adding to every platform that we have. It's a open source public domain, and we want to have the largest reach as possible. At the end of the day, we need to do publications to see if you worked with this HAWQS, or worked with SWAT, you need to want to make sure that you cite them properly, and thereby more people will know about the work that's been done by you and others. So this is something I always tell the group. Actually, our goal is to come up with 1,000 papers per year. So we need more of you to using them and publishing your work.
Great, Joel. I don't know if you wanted to keep the meeting chat open to see if there's any lagging questions, like overarching ones that we might be able to address, or if you just wanted to kind of close it out here.
Yeah, let's leave the chat open, and that way people can continue asking questions, and people can click through the links that Alyssa, you mentioned you were going to provide as well. I'm not sure what is once we close the meeting, so we'll leave it open. But I think as far as the presentation goes, I think we're probably set.
Great. So I just added those links into the chat. Again, I mentioned I'm including links to the documentation page that Katie is showing now. That has use cases, technical documentation, also links to SWAT documentation. And then there's also the link for where the recording will be made available.
It might take a little bit to get that recording uploaded because we have to go through a few different sort of requirements as an EPA document or EPA recording, but it'll be there fairly soon, and we'll be able to send you a note about that as well.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
I appreciate everyone taking the time to come to the webinar, and I hope it was informative and useful.
Katie, we need to show them the upload project option in the future. Yep.
Oh, I was on mute. I said, I think you need to be on tier 2 in order to upload, but yeah, I can show it.
Yeah. And also, what did you show the sharing project option?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because
I mean, I didn't click on it, but yeah, I said I showed it was an option, but yeah, I could probably.
Yeah, those two are important thing because I was responding to a lot of the messages, so probably I missed it.
Okay.
And it looks like at least for attendees, there's still 77 people logged on. I don't know if it's people who are waiting to see if there's anything else interesting or if it's people who haven't had a chance to log off, but I figured just let folks know.
And so we'll send the link out to the and the video, the webinar recording, and will it also include the slide deck?
Let me look at the website again. I don't remember, but we
Okay.
can certainly, if not, we can post it on the HAWQS. The slide deck we can certainly post on the HAWQS one.
Okay.
Let's see. I think most of them just have the YouTube video.
We are planning to put it on the HAWQS website, right? The video.
We can put it there as well. And so because it's part of this webinar series, we'll post it on
Okay.
the
Okay.
series webs, and then once we get it 508 compliant and get the transcript in and everything else, we'll put it.
Yep.
We'll put it here, and then. Oh, is there an attendance certificate? I don't know if we do attendance certificates.
I don't understand. Can you PPL show the where to download this? Not sure what this means here. Project database. Okay. Can you show them how to download the project database?
Sure. Right. So actually, I'm going to do it on a different one because this one's really large and it'll take a while.
Just show them the link where the location, how to
Yeah.
go and activate. You don't need to really run this stuff.
Okay. So you would just go to the projects. You're underneath the summary over here, you have project downloads. And then you can select whether you want to include your GIS project data in your download, which will be your land use, elevation, and soils map. And then you would just click zip project files, and then it would zip all of your scenarios and all of your GIS and all of these files as well into a zipped folder, and then you can download that.
At the same time, if you don't need the project, if you need just the GIS file on the right-hand side, we also have some basic GIS file that could be downloaded directly. Anyone else have more questions or comments before we?
I see there's a hand up. Maybe if that's an active hand, if you could put your question in the chat, then we can see if we can answer it.
So yes, Eckerd method is used for the base flow. I'm just pulling up that screen right here. And we, make these assumptions. You can change these values, and you can request it for each subbasin, or you can request for all subbasins. You can change your filter parameters and your BFI max value as well.
This last question and then close out since it's 1:30.
All simulated.
Yeah.
We don't have observation for every subbasin outlet, so it's for only simulated outputs.
Right, for those who are still here, thanks, Katie, for a great presentation. Thanks, Alyssa, for keeping track of all those questions. Thanks, Srini and Arun also for answering all those questions in the chat. They're fast and furious. I guess we can call it a day. Let's close out this webinar.
Okay, thanks, Joel.
Thank you, everyone. Alyssa, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alyssa. And when we close it, will it just automatically stop recording?
I'm not sure. I just sent Kirsten an email on that. We can also, she might be able to stop the recording as well. 'Cause I think there's a bunch of people who are still on who kind of left it open.
Yeah. Yeah, because like mine, I don't have the option to stop recording on mine, so.
No, I don't see it on mine either.
All right, well, I'm gonna go eat lunch.
Sounds good. Thanks again for the presentation.
All right, thanks again for the opportunity. All right, bye.